All right. So I wanted to address this because it kind of has come up recently, both in my own household and conversations with my girlfriend. And I feel like I was meeting up with a fellow CFA charter holder recently. We were kind of discussing when we went through the program. So I guess quickly, as a little bit of background, I'm Ben Collins. I'm a CFA charter holder, so you might think that I'm a little bit biased, but I'm going to try and go through, pros and cons and just my own thought process about, what I think about the CFA marks in 2025, and what maybe you should think about as well. I'm the founder and chief investment officer at Options Autopilot. It's an automated options program. One thing I'll reference, I guess, is and one of the things I think was lacking in the CFA to start was options. And so if you want to get a free course, I have a pretty in-depth one down below. Request access, so we can get you in there. I've had quite a few people request access so far. So that is one thing I'll talk about, but I'll talk about that a little bit later and maybe how it's relevant or not relevant to the CFA. So this kind of came up because my girlfriend, who is younger than I am by a decent amount, is in credit analysis and kind of credit portfolio management. It's not portfolio management when we think of asset management or stocks. She's more of analyzing equipment financing deals, but then she's also partially responsible for a little bit of business development or connecting banks and kind of doing that type of stuff. A little softer skills, more people skills, and she was kind of asking and considering getting the CFA designation, and she would ask me, should she do this? And my initial kind of reaction is, is it going to be beneficial for your job? Because she's heard me describe it, talk about it. We weren't together when I was going through the exam. But given the amount of studying that's required, even though she'd be capable of it, it is a significant commitment. So you really need to want to do it. For context, I basically started studying, in 2008 during the financial crisis, and it was my last year of college. And I've always been interested in the markets, interested in trading. I kind of got inspired by my grandma originally, coincidentally enough, and I was trading in 2004 a little bit, got more into it in 2007. Of course, thought I was a genius because the bull market makes everyone a genius, as they say. Picked up options trading, and it's funny to see the parallels of like 2020 and 2021 into 2022 that I was kind of experiencing from '07 to '08, into '09 time frame. They say history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. I think they attributed that to Mark Twain, but I don't know if that's true. I can't remember. Anyways, someone can comment below and say it's besides the point. But I basically was originally mechanical engineering, switched into business and marketing, but then I was like, oh, I've always been interested in the markets, kind of wanted to do that, but I didn't want to switch again, right? I didn't want to stay in college longer. So I was trying to think of what is a good credential to get to prove both intelligence and expertise and dedication. And one of my, I guess, friends at the time who was living in the same apartment building where I was working, he was studying for the CFA. He's like, oh, you should look into the CFA. So I started looking into it, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a really good credential to have. It's going to kind of show my ability and interest. Some places that I would have wanted to work, they somewhat incentivize passing the levels. They valued the charter quite a bit, so they would incentivize people to study and get the CFA designation while you were working. So that was also kind of appealing if I was going to go that route. The other thing was just, I've always had an interest in markets. I would say I'm more of a technical person in terms of, wanting to learn and basically be an expert in a subject matter. Obviously, when you have the CFA, it doesn't necessarily make you an expert, but it does give you a lot more in-depth knowledge than you might get otherwise, right? I would still say, what you're doing in your career then really solidifies it for the most part in what you're focusing on, but it does give you a very good education. I'd say I don't regret doing it at all. This was back in 2013 when I achieved mine. I didn't pass on first try. That's the other thing I kind of talked to my girlfriend about was, if you end up failing, are you going to want to do it again? Now, keep in mind, back then, they were only offering level 1 twice a year, and they were only offering level 2 and 3 once a year. So imagine the pressure on one exam only. Personally, I think that was probably better and still would be better for people. But we kind of saw it happening, and I was like, eventually they're going to expand offering it more because they probably just want to get their fees. That's unfortunate. I do think that kind of degrades it a little bit, but I still think that it is a very good credential. So I guess my thought to her was, is it really going to benefit you? If she wants to do it as a personal thing to get the designation and she thinks it's really going to be a good thing to have long term, whether or not it's from a monetary standpoint, if mentally or I guess confidence wise she's going to feel good about it. I guess as context, she is originally from Russia. She speaks English now, but didn't when she originally got here about 10 years ago. So it could be something that she views as a good designation to have and maybe adds to her resume more than it would otherwise. And right now it's just her and one other person at this company, so she could be viewed more as the technical person, or maybe it would help her be a CFO or something in the future is kind of how she's viewing it. In general, I would almost say, it's not really needed if you're already in where you want to be and they don't seem to require it. You can still learn those skills. You're not going to obviously learn it as in depth as if you're going through the curriculum in terms of the topics. But I mean, if you're already at like a private equity shop or, some type of, investment banking place, I would think they would still view it as very helpful. But if you guys are learning what you're doing and it's not really necessary, I don't think you necessarily need to do it. But if you like studying, if you like grinding and achieving something very difficult, then I think that this is definitely something to still pursue in 2025. I don't think that's changed. I was watching a video from, I think it's AJ Schmreck. I don't know how to say his last name. He is a CFA charter holder. It was on YouTube talking about, is it a waste in 2025? And I guess there was a Financial Times article talking about the decline in exam participants and people who have registered for the CFA exam has gone down quite a bit. I think COVID kind of really knocked it down, and supposedly the CFA was talking about how, China was a pretty big driver for a while in terms of new registrants, and now that's kind of declined. I don't know. I think it's going to be a combination of people maybe losing interest or thinking AI is going to take over, or, multiple things. What I would say, though, is I don't think that, and I'm not discounting AI at all. I think it will be massive and probably will do even more things than we even think of. But it can probably take over a lot of analysis in terms of a baseline. I still think you're going to have to do your own kind of in-depth analysis separately and just kind of have them do the grunt work almost. So it still is going to take some creative thinking skills and people skills to actually do things and get things done. I think that'll be the case for at least the next decade, if not the next 20 years. And that's even if it gets really sophisticated, just because I think there's enough inefficiencies in certain markets and a little bit of nuance that I can figure it out. Again, as I say that, I think you can teach something anything. So it's in terms of AI, it's probably able to be learned, the nuances, as long as you're feeding it the correct information. But that being said, I still think it's a good credential. And I think it's still valued. And as with anything with supply and demand, if there's less supply and demand is still there, there's still going to be value for that credential, and it's still valuable for asset management. That would be probably maybe the obvious answer is if you want to be a portfolio manager of both, in stocks or in asset management, I still think it's a good credential to pursue. I personally would still say to do your own investing, learn outside of the curriculum, especially if you're coming out of college or still in college. That was one of the things that I think was lacking, or maybe it's still lacking. And I mentioned this in other videos that I've posted, but it's one thing to read it on a paper and learn it in a book. It's another thing to risk capital and invest your own money. Um, that's why I think I had a leg up in terms of both investments and just knowledge from actual markets, is because it was such an interest of mine outside of studying for the CFA. Like I had a trading blog back in the day, and that I think is helpful because I was studying with a lot of people where I was working. It was an institutional consulting firm, and basically we probably had 30 CFAs there. I think a lot of the people that I was studying with didn't really know how to actually manage money because they had never risked their own money, right? It's all theoretical on paper. They know how to do diversification, whatever. That's all good, but until you're actually risking your own capital, I wouldn't want someone managing my money that is only passed an exam, right? Someone might say, oh yeah, well, it's like a surgeon just kind of passed their boards, but they've never actually performed a surgery in real life, right? Do you want that person operating on you first? I don't really think so. That would be something I would just say is some of your extracurriculars, and I do wish that the CFA had more of those types of, I guess, benefits, and maybe they've gotten them since I've gone through the program. I actually tried to get them to do some type of MBA style, student portfolio. That ended up going nowhere. They didn't really say anything, which is unfortunate. I think that would be very helpful for the members and the people going through it. That's one of the reasons I would say, even if you have any interest in like options or trading, go through my course. I mean, at this point it's free. I don't know if it'll be free at the time of this filming, but it should tell you more like actual real world type scenarios that you don't learn in the book. It's still just textbook definitions of options and trading, but it's not the real world. And coincidentally, when I think about it, I still am glad that I did it. I think it's helpful and beneficial. In reality, it did help me in my career, for sure. And it didn't help me with Options Autopilot in reality, though. That was all from my own personal interest and side interest in options trading and that type of knowledge, and like developing that over decades, basically, which is crazy to say at this point in my career. But that was just from my own personal interest, right, and passion for it. It's not like I read the CFA book and then I was like, oh, okay, yeah, let's build this automated platform. It was years of doing it, and then also running into the typical issues that people have when trading and investing in general, and where automation can help and how it can help, right? And especially with options, because there's just structural inefficiencies there that you can exploit. But that's kind of beside the point. That's just a highlight that even though I do think it's a great credential, doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be, you're going to benefit from it fully. So you just got to weigh those types of things and see if that's something that you really value. If you like self-studying, again, I think that it can be good. One thing I would say, if you're going to do it, and Kate, a fellow charter holder, and I were talking about this, when we were coming up in 2013, obviously this was pre-COVID and anything like that, which is weird to think about. There's kind of that bifurcation now, pre and post-COVID. There was a lot more, I think, camaraderie and people getting together in groups and studying. I would suggest maybe trying to find that, like actual in person. I kind of had it built in from where I was working at the institutional consulting firm. We had anywhere from like 5 to 7 people on any given level at any given time. So it's like you were working with these people, and then you're all, for the most part, all studying after hours. And you're all working towards a goal, and you kind of see, look over and either see someone or at work you can talk to them. I think that that's very helpful, and I would recommend doing that for anyone looking to do the charter at this point, regardless of when you watch this. I just think it helps you not feel like you're suffering alone, if you want to look at it that way, but you can just bounce things off of people. I mean, there are multiple scenarios where it's like, I might understand a topic better, for example, options, than somebody else. I can more easily explain it to them, and there might be some other topic that someone knows better than I, and they can kind of explain it to me, and you can just kind of go back and forth. I mean, you're not really competing with those people. I wouldn't view it that way in terms of even if they are your coworkers, right? Um, I would say it's still just hopefully everyone's trying to be helpful, and that was very fun about the whole process for me. I mean, when I was doing it, I was when did I start? I think I started when I was 25. What was I? Yeah, 25, 26. So that was just fun to be doing it with other people that were doing it at the same time. So I would definitely recommend trying to do something like that. I mean, even if it is online, group, but I do think there's something helpful to have it be in person. Not just studying with everyone, but like if you study and then you can kind of get together and discuss and review, that just makes it probably more enjoyable. And like I said, you feel like you're suffering it, going through the same thing. So I would definitely recommend trying to do that regardless of when you tackle it. It is one of the cheapest ways to get a very, I think, good credential. Obviously, you have to be self-motivated and disciplined to study yourself, but you can't get an MBA. You can't get anything else that I think is close to it. I guess I shouldn't say that. I don't know how much like the CPA or whatever is. From what I've heard, obviously, though, the CPA is not necessarily even as difficult as the CFA. But those are the things you kind of want to weigh. I also want to say, unless you make it to the top tier in finance, which statistically is going to be difficult, there are better ways to make money. So, like, ultimately, if you're going to be a portfolio manager of a huge, investment fund, or you want to be entrepreneurial and start your own fund, right? You could do that, and the credential would be helpful. But you're not necessarily going to be making money unless you're at like a big private equity firm or investment banking firm. So you should weigh those things as if it's really going to get you there. The reason that's related is, I was kind of telling my girlfriend that, do you really need to do this to make more money? Like, you guys make more money by doing more deals and probably getting more customers, and it's probably more beneficial to strategically either get more relationships. So I wouldn't disregard the relationship aspect of just business and I guess any job in general. And ultimately, the way to make more money is bring in revenue, right? And usually if you're a CFA and you're doing analysis, you might be viewed as a cost center. And that's always difficult to then get compensated what you should get. So that could be, if you're always viewed as a cost center, there's always going to be kind of a cap there. If you're viewed as bringing in and making money, then that's a benefit, and hopefully they will compensate correctly for that. But in general, if you are, let's say, able to just bring in more deals, or you're able to move up market and do $1 million deals, couple $1 million deals, and you're getting a percentage of those deals that you're doing, it doesn't really matter if you have a CFA or not, right? So that's kind of the same scenario for my girlfriend, is that she basically can do more deals, and that's what would move up revenue for the business. It's not necessarily if she has this CFA, all of a sudden, they're going to be able to get more business, and people are really going to respect their business and do higher price deals, right? So you just got to weigh those types of things. Again, doesn't mean not to get it, but it has to be a self-motivation. In that case, for sure, like, you have to have the pride of wanting to do it and the time to want to do it, because it is a very big commitment. So I don't want to talk anyone out of trying it. I just want people to know that going forward, like they say, 300-hour minimum study, I think, is fairly accurate. I'm probably stupid, so I probably have to do 400 hours, but it's more of, you just have to have the time and the dedication. I would always say that I'm probably inefficient with my studying, but so it took me a little bit more, but you just have to put in the time. Anything can be learned. It's just a matter of putting the time and then testing and then trying to remember it. But it is definitely a difficult exam to do. But that's what I think what makes it unique. And the fewer people sitting for exams now, that's probably a benefit for people that are going to sit in the future, because there's less competition. And for those people that are still viewing that as a good credential to have, that would be still helpful. I still think it would help get you in the door at any job if you're graduating. Some places I think do have kind of a pre-prep. You can sit for level 1, I think, while you're still in college. I think I would definitely say that's a good way to go if you were even considering it. I didn't even have the financial background as much as anyone that was studying finance. That's part of the reason I did the exams, but anybody who already has that is at an advantage compared to myself. So I would say that is something to consider as well. And I guess to speak to that too, anyone who's in college right now that happens to see this, if you can get involved with like your student investment fund, I would definitely do that. That's both good for the resume, but it's also just good for taking actual risk and investing actual capital that you wouldn't otherwise, or maybe you couldn't at the time of being in college. You could use Options Autopilot and have it making money for you while you're in college as a shameless plug there. But I would say in general though, if for the fund, if they can give you good exposure to actual other types of investments, that could make the exam also a lot easier in terms of giving you like a real world reference for some of the problems you'll be working on. And even if you were, say, interested in real estate or whatever it is, the more you can do on your own, it'll probably make it more of an aha moment when you're actually tackling it in the real world. Ultimately, it's kind of just a stream of consciousness, my thoughts on it. If anyone has any questions, feel free to comment below or shoot me an email. I'm glad to give you my opinion on a specific scenario, or maybe you're someone considering it. I can try and weigh in on your situation. But yeah, it's still a good credential now. I don't think it's going to get fully eroded by AI or anybody that's either sitting or not sitting for the exam. I still think there's probably a 10 to 20 year runway of it being beneficial, and even more so, like I said, there's probably going to be other things that you're always going to have to kind of assess, and there's going to need to be some actual human analysis being done, maybe less, but I still think it's a good thing to have and something to pursue. It just is a case-by-case basis and your own personality. So hope that was a little bit helpful, gave you a little bit, at least my thoughts. I'm not all about like, oh yeah, for sure do it. It's a no-brainer. I wouldn't say that at all. It definitely doesn't make sense in many instances. I'm going to go through another video of CFA versus MBA, because a lot of people might be weighing that. So look for that video if you kind of are looking for that type of analysis. And yeah, I guess lastly, if you're looking for any type of option stuff, feel free to check out Options Autopilot. I'm pretty pumped about it, and see what a fellow CFA charter holder did with, I guess, their investment knowledge in general, and if that is helpful or not helpful for helping you decide on getting the CFA designation. So appreciate you guys watching, and hopefully maybe share this with someone who is also contemplating the CFA if it's helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.